Hello friends, welcome back to math. Today you and I are going to keep working on telling time, but today we're going to be talking about telling time before and after the hour, okay? Before we look at it though, I want us to do a quick little review of what we learned yesterday about telling time on our clock face. Okay, so I have a clock face here. Remember, this is what we call an analog clock where it actually has hands on it. And I want us to quickly just review the two hands that we have. So remember, our shorter one is going to be our hour hand. Whichever number it is pointing towards or in between, that's going to tell us what hour it is. So if my clock hand, my hour hand is pointing directly at the 3, our time is going to be really close to 3 o'clock. If it's pointing between 3 and 4, that means it's going to be in the 3 o'clock hour, or between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Okay. The minute hand is our longer hand. It almost touches the numbers on the clock face. And wherever it's pointing is telling us how many minutes past the hour it is. So if our hour hand is between 3 and 4, and our minute hand is pointing at the 5, that means we are about 25 minutes past the hour. So that means it would be 3:25. Now remember, a lot of clocks don't have these minutes written on it. Instead, you just have the numbers. We start at 0 up here at the 12, and we can count by 5s for each number to tell how many minutes past we are. So if I was trying to figure this out and I didn't have these numbers on the outside, I could start up here and go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And that way I know it's 25 minutes past 3 o'clock. Now you may notice there are some other words written on my clock here that we haven't seen yet. On the inside, you can see it says o'clock. Now you might have noticed I like to say 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Remember, when our minute hand is pointing directly up at the 12, and our hour hand is pointing straight at one of our numbers, like this, my hour hand is pointing at 7, so I can read this as 7 o'clock. Now, if my minute hand goes to the 1, that would be 5 minutes past 7 o'clock. If I go to the 2, that's 10 minutes past. If I go to the 3, we have a new word. It is 15 minutes past 7 o'clock, but we call that something else. We actually call it quarter past. So we would say it is a quarter past 7 o'clock. Okay? And the reason we do that is because we can actually slice our clock into 4 pieces like this, and we could cut it into 4 chunks, and it would make 1 piece, 1 piece, 1 piece, 1 piece. And those would be our 4 quarters of our clock, kind of like there's 4 quarters in a dollar. And when we've gone 15 minutes past, that means we're a quarter past the beginning of the hour. Now, if we keep going with our minute hand, we have 20 minutes past, 25 minutes past, and then if we're pointing straight down at the 6, we have something called half past. And that's because we are halfway through the hour. We have gone from 0 minutes all the way to 30 minutes past the hour, which is half of our hour. So now it's 7:30 or half past 7. And then if we keep going with our minute hand, we have 25:02. Notice I'm not saying past. Once we get to the halfway point in our hour, we're now going to start talking about how close we are to the next hour. So in our case, we're talking about how close we are to the 8 o'clock hour. So that means we're going to say we're 25 minutes to 8 o'clock. So if my minute hand is pointing at 7, we have 25 minutes until it's 8 o'clock. This is also 7:35, but this is just a shorter way that we talk about it. So then we'd have 20 minutes to, and then if we go up here straight at the 9, we say 1:45, which means we only have 15 minutes until it's 8 o'clock. Okay? And that's because we have 5, 10, 15 minutes before our minute hand is going to be pointing all the way at the very top, but it's going to be 8 o'clock. So at 7:45, we are 7:45. We have to make sure we're saying it to the next hour because we're not talking about 7 o'clock anymore. We're talking about in relation to 8 o'clock. Okay? On this half, we're saying it's a quarter past 7, it's 20 minutes past 7, it's half past 7, but now we say 25 to 8, 20 to 8, quarter to 8, and then if we keep going, 10 minutes to 8, 5 to 8, and of course, once we get all the way back to the top, our hour hand would now be pointing straight at the 8, and it would be 8 o'clock. Now, ladies and gents, you do not need to know all of these different ways to say this. We're going to be talking about 3 important ones, though. We need to be learning how to say quarter past and what that looks like on our clock, which would be something like this. Okay. So now it's a quarter past 8. And you need to know half past, which is 30 minutes past 8. So this would be 8:30. And you need to know quarter past, or sorry, quarter to. So this would be a quarter to 9. So this is 8, because we're between the 8 and the 9, 8:45. Okay. So those are a couple of the vocab words that we need to know for today. Let's go watch our visual learning video to help us get a better understanding.
Look at the time. Count by 5s to tell the time. It is 1:15. What are other ways to name the same time? It is 15 minutes after 1, or quarter past 1. The clock shows 1:30. It is 30 minutes after 1, or half past 1. Now the clock shows 1:50. How can you say the time using the word after?
Since we're talking about it being 1:50 and we want to use the word after, we can say how many minutes it is after 1 o'clock. So if it's 1:50, it would be 50 minutes after 1 o'clock.
It is 50 minutes after 1. Times after the half hour are often read as times before the next hour. The clock shows 3:30. It is 30 minutes before 4. Now the clock shows 3:45. It is 15 minutes before 4, or quarter to 4. The clock shows 3:50. How many minutes before the hour is this time? Select your answer.
Well, if we move from the 10 to the 11 with our minute hand, that would be 5 minutes. And then the 11 to the 12 would be 5 more minutes. So we have 10 minutes left of the hour before it's 4 o'clock. So it is 10 minutes to 4. We have 10 minutes left.
It is 10 minutes before 4.
Let's try it. Select a pair of clocks to see how you can say the time in different ways. Let's look at 7:15. So notice our hour hand is between the 7 and the 8, and our minute hand is pointing right at the 3. So it's 7:15. But here's another way we could say it.
15 minutes after 7. Quarter past 7.
Let's look at 7:30. Our hour hand is still between the 7 and the 8, so we know we're in the 7 o'clock hour, but our minute hand is pointing directly down to the 6, which means it's 7:30.
30 minutes after 7. Half past 7. 30 minutes before 8.
Now, those are all ways we could say 7:30. We're 30 minutes past 7, or we're 30 minutes before 8 o'clock, and we're half past 7. We're right in the middle of the hour. Now let's look at 7:45. Our hour hand is still between the 7 and the 8 because we're in the 7 o'clock hour, and our minute hand is pointing straight at the 9, which means it's 7:45. But here's another way to say it.
45 minutes after 7. Quarter to 8. 15 minutes before 8.
So we are 45 minutes after 7. We are a quarter until 8 o'clock, or you could say we're 15 minutes to 8 o'clock because there's only 15 minutes left in the 7 o'clock hour.
Now you know how to say the time in different ways.
Great job!
Okay, we need to get some more practice, so let's go hop in our workbooks. Okay, we are starting our workbooks on page 480. So if you need to pause to go get your workbook and turn to that page with your pencil, go ahead and pause me now. And then once you're ready, let's go ahead and answer these 2 guided practice problems. It says complete so both clocks show the same time, then circle another way to say the time. So we have our analog clock, our clock with our hour hand and our minute hand, and we need to read the time and write it on our digital clock. Okay, so let's see. For the hour, our hour hand is pointing between the 2 and the 3, which means we're in the 2 o'clock hour. So we can put a 2 in the hour part of our clock. And then to find out how many minutes past 2 o'clock it is, let's start at the 12 and count by 5s until we reach our minute hand. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Okay, so it is 2:30. Now we need to think of another way that we could say this. Let's read both of our choices over here. We have half past 2, which means we're halfway through the hour, or we have 30 minutes before 2. Well, let's think about that. 30 minutes before 2 would mean we haven't reached the 2 o'clock hour yet. But we can see that our hour hand is between the 2 and the 3, which means we're already in the 2 o'clock hour. Half past 2 means 30 minutes past 2 o'clock, which is exactly what our clocks are showing. So we're going to circle half past 2. Let's look at number 2. Our digital clock says 6:45. We need to write that onto our analog clock with our minute and our hour hands. I like to start with my hour hand. So if we're in the 6 o'clock hour, we need to put our hour hand between the 6 and the 7. Remember, the hour hand is the shorter one. So I'm just going to point my hour hand between those two numbers. Oh, I'm going straight down. Oh, too far. Hold on, let's see. Notice my hour hand is not perfect, you guys, and that's okay as long as you're doing your best. Remember, it's shorter, so I'm not making it really long, but I want to make sure it's pointing between the 6 and the 7. Now, for 45 minutes, or 6:45, we need to see what number our minute hand should be pointing to. So let's see, let's start at the 12 and count by 5s until we reach 45, and then that'll tell us what number to stop on. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So our minute hand needs to be pointing straight at the 9. And that makes it 6:45. Notice my minute hand is nice and long, and I'm just almost touching my numbers on my clock face. Now we need to think of another way to write this. So our two choices are 6:45 or 6:15. So remember, a quarter is 15 minutes. So if we are looking at 6:15, we would be going 5, 10, 15. So our minute hand would have to be pointing at the 3, okay? But if we're looking at 6:45, that would be 15 minutes until the end of the hour. So it would have to be 5, 10, 15. Our minute hand would have to be pointing at the 9, which ours is. And we know that we are 6:45 because there's only 15 minutes left until 7 o'clock. We're going to say 6:45. 6:15 would be 6:15, and that's not what our clock shows. Let's watch one more quick video.
What time is it? Well, it's time to tell time. How? By counting by 5s. Here we go. Starting here, the minute hand is on 3, so that's 5, 10, 15. The clock shows 2:15. We can say 15 minutes after 2 or 2:15. For this clock, the minute hand is at 6, so that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 2:30. We can say 30 minutes after 2 or 2:30. We can also call this 30 minutes before 3. This clock shows 50 minutes after 2, or we can say 10 minutes before 3. This one shows 45 minutes past 2. We can also call this 15 minutes before 3 or 2:45. As you can see, there are different ways we can say the same times. No matter how you say it, counting by 5s will help you.
Okay, let's get some more practice and turn the page in our workbook. Let's do number 3 together. It says complete, so both clocks show the same time, then write the time before or after the hour. So if we look at number 3, we have our digital clock time, and it says 4:45, and now we need to write it on our analog clock with our minute and our hour hand. So I'm going to start with my hour hand. We're in the 4 o'clock hour, so that means I'm going to put my minute hand between the 4 and the 5, or sorry, not my minute hand, my hour hand needs to go between the 4 and the 5. And I'm just going to make a short little hour hand to point between my 4 and my 5. Okay. Notice I'm not too worried about exactly where I'm at. I don't want to be pointing right at the 4, and I don't want to point right at the 5, just somewhere in the middle. Okay. And now I need to figure out where to put my minute hand. So if I start at the 0 and I count by 5s, I go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So to make my minute hand point at 45 minutes after 4, I need to point it at the 9. And I'm going to make it longer for my minute hand. Now we need to think. They want us to say our time in minutes before 5 o'clock. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to plop my little mouse cursor here on my minute hand, and I'm going to count by 5s until I get to the 12, which is the top of the hour, or 5 o'clock. So let's see how many minutes we have left. 5, 10, 15. We have 15 minutes before 5 o'clock, and that's what we're going to write down here. This would also be the same as 4:45, because we have a quarter of our clock to go from here to here before we're at 5 o'clock. I want you to look at number 4 and do your best to solve it. write your time on your analog clock, and then figure out how else you could write the time, and then come back to me when you're all done. Okay, let's look. It says 12:15. So I'm going to do my hour hand first. So I'm in the 12 o'clock hour, which means I need to put my hour hand between the 12 and the 1. So I'm going to go like this and just draw a short little hour hand between the 12 and the 1. Now I have 15 minutes after 12, so I'm going to start up here and go 5, 10, 15. So to show 15 minutes after 12, I need to put my minute hand pointing straight at the 3. Nice and long. Remember, hour hand short, minute hand long. And now I need to figure out how else I could write this time. It says quarter past. Another way to think of this is 15 minutes past. So what hour are we 15 minutes past? It's 15 minutes past 12 o'clock. So I'm going to say 15 minutes past 12. Not too hard. It just takes a little bit of practice and remembering which numbers are a quarter past, half past, and a quarter to. That's all. We just have to keep practicing. We're going to come down here and do number 6 together. It says, look at the clock to solve each problem. What time will it be in 30 minutes? Write that time in 2 different ways. So the very first thing we need to do is figure out what time it shows on our clock right now. So let's see. Let's look at our hour hand first. Our hour hand is pointing between the 5 and the 6. So that means we are in the 5 o'clock hour. And then let's figure out how many minutes past 5 we are. So I'm going to start at 0 and count by 5s. 5, 10, 15. It's 5:15. So what are 2 ways that we could say that time? So now that we know the time, we need to add 30 minutes. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to start at my 3 where my minute hand is, and I'm going to count by 5s until I've gone 30 minutes. So count with me. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So my minute hand would have to be pointed at the 9. So in 30 minutes, it wouldn't be 5:15, it would actually be 5, what? Do you remember what the 9 is? What's 15 plus 30? Let's double check. Ready? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. In 30 minutes, it would be 5:45. Okay. That's one way that we could write this time, but we also have a couple other ways that we could write it. So let's think. How many minutes past 5 o'clock is it? Well, it's 45 minutes past 5 o'clock. So that's one way we could say it. We could say 45 minutes after 5. What's another way? How many minutes do we have until 6 o'clock? Let's count. So if I'm using my mouse and I'm counting by 5s until I get to the top, I go 5, 10, 15. It's 15 minutes to 6. So that's another way to say it. 15 minutes to 6. And you remember what another word for 15 minutes is? A quarter. So this is where we have a quarter to 6. There's 3 ways that we could write the same time, 5:45. So I wrote it in 4 different ways, you guys. It's pretty cool. I want you to do number 7. Let me read it with you guys first. What time will it be in 50 minutes? Write this time in 2 different ways. So you're going to do the same thing that we did on number 6. Find out what time it is on this clock first, and then add 50 more minutes and figure out what the new time is. And then I want you to think of what are 2 ways you could say that new time. Take your time and then come back to me when you're done. Okay, we need to figure out what time it is on this clock. So my hour hand is pointing between the 9 and the 10, which means we're in the 9 o'clock hour. 9 o'clock. And then I'm going to start at my 0 and count by 5s until I reach my minute hand. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. It is 9:40. Now this problem is a little bit tricky. When we add 50 minutes to this time, we're not going to be in the 9 o'clock hour anymore. So we have to be careful. Let's do this. So let's start at our minute hand and add 5 and add 50 minutes. So I'm going to count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So guess what? When we crossed the 12 or the top of the hour, we entered the 10 o'clock hour. So our hour hand would now be more like this, okay, on our new time if it was 50 minutes later. And then our minute hand would look like this because it's pointing down at the 6 because that's where we saw would get us 50 minutes later. So let's see, our new time would be how many minutes past? Well, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We're 30 minutes past 10 o'clock. So it's 10:30. So that's our new time. That would be 50 minutes after 9:40, which is the time that we started with. So let's think of some other ways we could say that time. I said one of them when I was helping you, I said we are 30 minutes after 10 because we're 30 minutes after the top of the 10 o'clock hour, okay? What's another way? Do you remember what we say instead of 30 minutes after? You remember? We say half. We say half past 10, okay? We could also talk about how many minutes there are until it's 11 o'clock. Do you know how many minutes there would be left? Well, we're halfway through, so 30 minutes is the half, so we still have 30 minutes until 11 o'clock. So we could say 30 minutes to 11, okay? There's 4 different ways right there that we could say that at the same time. Okay, we're gonna turn the page and just do 2 more problems. Okay, let's do number 9 together. It says, a train left the station at 6:55. What are 2 other ways to say this time? So our clock is showing 6:55 here, and they want us to figure out 2 other ways to say that time. Whenever there's a question like this, and my minute hand is not pointing at quarter past, or half past, or quarter to, what I always do is I think, well, how many minutes past the hour am I? And how many minutes till the next hour am I? And that gives me 2 ways to say it right there. So let's see, it is 6:55. So how many minutes has it been since 6 o'clock? It's been 55 minutes since 6 o'clock. So in other words, we could say 55 minutes after 6. Now let's look at our clock and see how many more minutes do we have until it's 7 o'clock? Well, let's start at our 11 where our minute hand is and count by 5s. Remember, I'm going to make a big jump between my 11 and my 12, and that's 5. So 5, oh, we're at 7 o'clock. So guess what? We only have 5 minutes until it's 7 o'clock. So we're going to say 5 minutes to 7. Pretty easy peasy. Just take some practice. Let's look at number 11, and then you're going to solve it by yourself. James gets home at 6 o'clock. He starts his homework at 6:15. At what time does he start his homework? So you're going to figure out which clock is showing at 6:15, okay? Take your time, see if you can figure out which one it is, and then come back to me when you want to double check. Well, let's think. 6:15, quarter is the same as 15 minutes. So that's the same as saying 15 minutes past 6 o'clock. Well, that would be 6:15. So I need to figure out which one of my clocks is showing 6:15. So let's look at A. We have 6 o'clock. We have our hour hand pointing at the 6, and our minute hand is pointing at the 12. That's 6 o'clock. And I'm just going to write that right here. This is 6 o'clock. So that's what time he got home, but that is not the time that he started his homework. That's not 6:15. B has our hour hand between 6 and 7, so that's 6. And then let's count how many minutes past we are. 5, 10, 15. This clock shows 6:15. There we go. Our answer is B. Great job, you guys. Don't get discouraged with telling time. It just takes lots and lots of practice. Make sure you are practicing at home, reading the clocks around your house, okay? And we will keep practicing this more tomorrow. But for today, let's look at your homework. Okay, here's your homework, ladies and gents. You're going to go back into the workbook, and you're just going to do numbers 5 and 8. If you want a challenge problem, you can do number 10, but I want you to make sure you do 5 and 8 for sure. And then go do your quick check for today. And then you're going to spend some time on Math Facts Pro, or if you're in my class, you're going to do 20 minutes on iReady Math. Great job today, you guys. Keep up the hard work. You are doing a fantastic job. I will see you guys again back here tomorrow. Bye, friends.